On the distant planet of Cytherian, where towering crystalline spires pierced the skies and rivers glowed with bioluminescent energy, there lived a king named Zorithus. His reign was legendary, marked by conquests that expanded his empire across galaxies. But within the grand halls of his shimmering palace, one shadow loomed over his otherwise glorious rule: his youngest daughter, Lyria. Lyria was unlike anyone in her family. While her siblings trained tirelessly in combat arenas, mastering weapons and strategies, she spent most of her days hidden away in quiet corners of the palace. Her skin shimmered faintly blue like all Cytherians, but instead of radiating power, hers seemed dim, almost fragile. She couldn't wield their species' signature bioluminescent energy, the life force that powered their technology and fueled their strength. To make matters worse, her frame was slight, her movements hesitant, and her voice barely above a whisper. Zorithus saw only weakness when he looked at her. In a society built on dominance and prowess, Lyria's inability to measure up made her an embarrassment. Courtiers whispered behind her back, calling her the Ghost Princess. Even her own brothers mocked her during training sessions, laughing as she stumbled while trying to hold a plasma blade. Each failure chipped away at what little confidence she had left. One evening, after yet another humiliating display in front of the royal court, Zorithus summoned Lyria to his throne room. The massive chamber echoed with every step she took, her heart pounding louder than her feet against the polished floor. Standing before him, she kept her gaze low, unable to meet his piercing golden eyes. "You are no daughter of mine," Zorithus declared coldly, his deep voice reverberating through the hall. "You bring shame to this family and to our people. You cannot fight, you cannot lead, and you have no place here." Tears welled up in Lyria's eyes, but she dared not let them fall. Instead, she clenched her fists tightly, her nails digging into her palms. Before she could respond, Zorithus continued, "I have decided your fate. There is a primitive world called Earth, a place unfit for greatness, but perhaps suitable for someone like you. Tomorrow, you will leave Cytherian and never return." Shock rippled through Lyria. Banishment. To a world she knew nothing about. She wanted to protest, to beg for another chance, but years of rejection had silenced her spirit. All she could do was nod silently before retreating to her chambers. That night, Lyria sat alone under the glow of Cytherian's twin moons, staring out at the stars. A single thought burned in her mind. Why am I so weak? For the first time, though, a flicker of defiance stirred within her. If her father thought Earth would be her end, he was wrong. Somewhere beyond those stars lay answers, and maybe even a way to prove him wrong. The next morning, Lyria boarded a sleek spacecraft bound for Earth. As the ship ascended into the void of space, leaving Cytherian far behind, she felt both fear and hope swirling inside her. What awaited her on this strange new world? Would it crush her completely, or transform her into something more? Little did she know, her journey was just beginning, and the girl dismissed as weak would soon rise to become something no one, not even Zorithus, could have predicted. The spacecraft carrying Lyria descended through Earth's atmosphere, its sleek design shimmering faintly as it adjusted to the planet's gravity. For a moment, Lyria marveled at the sight of vast green forests, sprawling cities, and endless oceans below. It was unlike anything she had ever seen on Cytherian, where metallic structures dominated every landscape. But her awe quickly faded when the ship jolted violently, throwing her against the wall. With a loud hiss, the vessel crash-landed in a dense forest, leaving her dazed and disoriented. When Lyria finally stumbled out of the wreckage, the air felt strange, thicker yet somehow softer than what she was used to. Her glowing blue skin stood out starkly against the muted greens and browns of the trees around her. She tried to stand tall, but her legs wobbled under Earth's unfamiliar pull. Exhaustion overtook her, and she collapsed onto the damp ground, clutching her chest as if trying to hold herself together. Hours passed, or maybe it was just minutes. Time seemed meaningless in her weakened state. Just as darkness threatened to swallow her whole, a voice broke through the silence. "Hey, are you alive?" Lyria blinked open her eyes to see a man standing over her. He looked human, though his rugged appearance made him seem more like a warrior than the primitive being she'd been warned about. His dark hair was tousled, and his face bore scars that spoke of battles fought and survived. In his hand, he held a rifle, but he didn't point it at her. Instead, his sharp gray eyes studied her curiously. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said cautiously, lowering the weapon. "Can you understand me?" Lyria didn't respond. She couldn't speak his language, nor did she trust this stranger. But something in his tone, a mix of concern and curiosity, made her hesitate. Slowly, she nodded. The man introduced himself as Kel. He lived alone in a cabin deep in the woods, far from any city. After ensuring she wasn't armed or dangerous, he helped her to her feet and guided her back to his home. Along the way, he noticed how unsteady she was, how fragile she seemed compared to the stories he'd heard about aliens. Still, there was an elegance to her movements, a quiet dignity that intrigued him. Back at the cabin, Kel tended to her wounds and gave her water. Though they couldn't communicate verbally, they found ways to bridge the gap. He pointed to objects and named them, teaching her simple words like water, food, and safe. Lyria mimicked him carefully, her soft voice hesitant but eager to learn. Over time, their interactions grew less awkward, filled with gestures and shared glances. Kel soon realized that Lyria wasn't the threat others might have assumed. She was gentle, almost childlike in her wonder at everything around her. When she touched the wooden beams of his cabin, tracing the grain with her fingers, her eyes lit up with fascination. When he showed her fire for the first time, she gasped, mesmerized by the dancing flames. Despite her alien nature, Kel saw something deeply human in her: vulnerability, curiosity, and resilience. But Kel also sensed sadness in her. There were moments when she would stare into the distance, her luminous eyes clouded with pain. One night, as they sat by the fireplace, she drew symbols in the dirt with a stick. The shapes resembled people, one towering figure looming over smaller ones. Then she pointed to herself, bowed her head, and shook it sadly. It didn't take long for Kel to piece together the story. Rejection, abandonment, loneliness. Whatever world she came from, it hadn't treated her kindly. And now, here she was, stranded on Earth with no one but him. Though Kel had spent years avoiding connections after losing his comrades in war, something about Lyria tugged at his heart. Maybe it was her quiet determination, or maybe it was the way she trusted him despite everything she must have endured. Whatever it was, he decided then and there that he wouldn't turn her away. Not yet. For the first time in what felt like forever, Kel allowed himself to care about someone else. And for Lyria, who had always been told she was worthless, this small act of kindness felt like the beginning of something new, something she couldn't quite name, but desperately wanted to hold on to. Days turned into weeks as Lyria settled into Kel's cabin, adapting slowly to Earth and its rhythms. At first, her progress was minimal. She struggled with the planet's gravity, often stumbling when walking or dropping objects due to their unexpected weight. But Kel noticed something intriguing. Despite her frailty, she had an innate determination that refused to let her give up. One morning, while Lyria helped gather firewood, she accidentally tripped over a tree root and fell hard onto the ground. Instead of crying out in frustration like she might have done before, she pushed herself up quickly, brushing off the dirt. When Kel offered his hand to help, she shook her head firmly, standing on her own. It was a small moment, but it spoke volumes about her resilience. Kel decided it was time to push her further. He couldn't protect her forever, especially if others from her world came looking for her. If she were to survive and thrive on Earth, she needed more than just kindness. She needed strength. That evening after dinner, Kel brought out a wooden staff he used for training. "Lyria," he said, pointing to the stick and then to her. She tilted her head, confused. He mimicked holding the staff and swung it gently through the air. Then he pointed to her again. "You try." Hesitant but curious, Lyria took the staff in her hands. It felt heavier than she expected, and she nearly dropped it. Kale chuckled softly and adjusted her grip, showing her how to hold it properly. For hours, they practiced basic movements, swinging, blocking, stepping forward and backward. At first, Lyria fumbled constantly, her arms shaking under the effort. But each time she faltered, Kale encouraged her with nods and gestures, never letting her quit. Over time, her body began to adapt. Her steps became steadier, her swings smoother. One day, during a particularly intense session, Kale tapped her shoulder lightly with the end of his staff. Startled, Lyria instinctively raised hers to block the next strike. To both their surprise, a faint glow pulsed along the length of her weapon, a flicker of the bioluminescent energy she'd been unable to harness before. Kale froze, staring at the glowing staff. Then he looked at Lyria, who stared back in awe. The light faded almost instantly, but the significance wasn't lost on either of them. For years, Lyria had believed she was powerless, unworthy of her people's abilities. Yet here she was, proving that spark still existed within her. Encouraged by this breakthrough, Kale devised new exercises to help her unlock more of her potential. They trained not only physically but mentally as well. He taught her breathing techniques to calm her mind, explaining through gestures and demonstrations how focus could amplify her strength. Slowly, Lyria learned to channel her emotions, her anger at being cast aside, her fear of failure, her gratitude toward Kale, into raw power. One afternoon, while practicing near a stream, Lyria accidentally struck a rock with her staff. The impact sent a burst of energy rippling outward, causing ripples in the water and cracking the stone in half. She gasped, dropping the staff in shock. Kale grinned widely, clapping his hands together in approval. "You're getting stronger," he said, though she didn't understand the words. His pride shone clearly in his eyes, making her heart swell with pride of her own. As the days passed, Lyria's confidence grew alongside her skills. She no longer flinched at loud noises or hesitated to explore the forest around the cabin. Her once dim skin now shimmered brighter, responding to her growing mastery over her inner energy. Even her posture changed. She stood taller, her shoulders squared, as if finally claiming space she had long denied herself. But amidst these victories, questions lingered in Cal's mind. Who exactly were her people? Why had they abandoned her? And most importantly, would they come looking for her? For now, though, those worries remained unspoken. All that mattered was the bond forming between mentor and student, human and alien. Together, they were forging something extraordinary, a fragile princess transforming into a warrior, one step at a time. The peace Lyria and Kale had built in the forest didn't last long. One evening, as they sat by the fire sharing a quiet meal, the air suddenly grew heavy with an unnatural stillness. The birds stopped chirping and the wind died down, leaving an eerie silence that made the hairs on Cal's neck stand up. "Something's wrong," he muttered, grabbing his rifle instinctively. Lyria tensed beside him, her glowing eyes darting toward the trees. She could feel it too, a presence, dark and menacing, lurking just beyond sight. Moments later, the first attack came. A group of shadowy figures emerged from the woods, their sleek armor gleaming faintly under the moonlight. They were Scytherian warriors, members of the same ruthless race as Lyria. But unlike her soft glow, their bodies radiated an aggressive, pulsating light. Their leader stepped forward, sneering at Lyria with disdain. "So this is where you've been hiding, sister," he said mockingly. It was Vraxus, Lyria's older brother, and one of Zorithus' fiercest generals. His golden eyes burned with contempt as he looked her over. "Still weak, I see. Father should have ended your existence years ago." Lyria froze, her heart pounding like a drum. Memories of her father's cold words flooded back, paralyzing her with fear. But then she glanced at Kull, who stood firm despite being outnumbered. His steady gaze reminded her of everything she'd learned since arriving on Earth, the strength she had discovered within herself, the resilience she now carried in every step. "You won't take her," Kull growled, raising his weapon. The warriors laughed cruelly, clearly amused by the primitive human daring to challenge them. Vraxis smirked. "Pathetic. You think your little stick can harm us. We are Scytherians, born of power and glory. This girl is nothing but a stain on our family name. A stain we're here to erase." Without warning, the warriors lunged forward, weapons crackling with energy. Chaos erupted as Kull fired his rifle, the bullets ricocheting harmlessly off their shields. Lyria hesitated for only a second before stepping into the fray. Grabbing the wooden staff she used for training, she swung it with all her might, channeling her newfound strength. To everyone's surprise, including her own, the staff emitted a burst of bioluminescent energy, striking one warrior and sending him sprawling to the ground. The others paused, momentarily stunned. Even Vraxis looked taken aback. Kull seized the opportunity, grabbing a fallen branch and charging at the nearest enemy. Together, he and Lyria fought side by side, their movements synchronized despite the odds stacked against them. Lyria moved with a ferocity she hadn't known she possessed, each strike fueled by years of pent-up frustration and pain. But the battle wasn't without cost. In the heat of the fight, Kull took a hit from a plasma blade, collapsing to the ground clutching his side. Lyria screamed in panic, rushing to his side. Seeing her distraction, Vraxis raised his weapon, ready to strike her down. "No," Lyria shouted, her voice echoing through the clearing. Her entire body began to glow brighter than ever before, the energy swirling around her like a storm. With a roar, she unleashed a wave of blinding light, forcing the warriors to retreat into the shadows. As the dust settled, Lyria knelt beside Kull, tears streaming down her face. He groaned softly, still alive but badly injured. For the first time, Lyria realized what she truly stood to lose, and vowed never to let anyone hurt him again. The message was clear. She was no longer the fragile princess they had cast aside. She was something more. And Vraxis would regret underestimating her. The morning after the attack was quiet, but the tension in the air lingered like a storm waiting to break. Kull lay on a makeshift cot inside the cabin, his wound bandaged but far from healed. Lyria sat beside him, her hands trembling as she held a damp cloth to his forehead. Though he tried to reassure her with weak smiles and soft words, guilt gnawed at her heart. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was her fault, that her presence had brought danger into Kull's life. But guilt wasn't the only emotion swirling within her. Anger burned brighter than ever before. For years, she had been told she was weak, useless, unworthy. But last night, something inside her had awakened, a power she hadn't known existed. It scared her, yet it also gave her hope. Hope that she could protect herself, protect Kull, and maybe even stand up to those who had cast her aside. Determined not to let fear hold her back, Lyria threw herself into training harder than ever. Each day began before sunrise, with hours spent honing her combat skills under Kull's watchful eye. Despite his injury, he refused to sit idle, guiding her through advanced techniques and strategies. Together, they pushed her limits, teaching her how to harness her bioluminescent energy more effectively. One afternoon, while practicing near the edge of the forest, Lyria stumbled upon an unexpected discovery. Hidden beneath a cluster of moss-covered rocks was an ancient artifact, a crystalline dagger etched with intricate patterns that glowed faintly when touched. The relic pulsed gently in her hand, resonating with the same energy coursing through her veins. It was a remnant of the long-forgotten alliance between humans and Scytherians, left behind centuries ago during a time of peace. Kull recognized its significance immediately. "This is no ordinary weapon," he explained, his voice tinged with awe. "It responds to your strength, your willpower. Use it wisely." With the dagger in her possession, Lyria's transformation accelerated. She practiced wielding it alongside her staff, learning to combine physical strikes with bursts of energy. Her movements became fluid and precise, each blow carrying the weight of her determination. Slowly, she began to understand the truth about her abilities. They weren't just tools for battle. They were extensions of her spirit. As her confidence grew, so did her resolve. Lyria knew Vraxis wouldn't stop until she was eliminated. This realization forced her to confront difficult questions. What kind of warrior did she want to be? Would she fight out of hatred, seeking revenge against those who had wronged her? Or would she rise above their cruelty, using her newfound strength to forge a better path? The answer came one evening as she stood by the stream, staring at her reflection in the water. Her once dim glow now radiated brightly, illuminating the surrounding trees. She thought about Cal's kindness, his patience, and his belief in her potential. He had shown her what it meant to truly fight, not for dominance or destruction, but for something worth protecting. That night, Lyria made a vow. She would face Vraxis again, not as the fragile princess he remembered, but as someone stronger, fiercer, and unafraid. She would prove to herself, and to everyone else, that she was capable of greatness. When Cal saw the fire in her eyes the next morning, he smiled knowingly. "You're ready," he said simply. His words carried both pride and sadness, knowing the battles ahead would test her in ways neither of them could predict. Lyria nodded, gripping the crystalline dagger tightly. She didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. She was no longer afraid. The phoenix within her had risen from the ashes, and nothing would extinguish its flame. The calm before the storm shattered without warning. One fateful dawn, the skies above Earth darkened as massive alien ships descended from the heavens, their sleek metallic forms blotting out the sun. Vraxis had returned, but this time he wasn't alone. He brought with him an entire fleet, armed to conquer not just Lyria, but all of humanity. His message was clear: surrender or face annihilation. Cale watched from the cabin's window, his jaw tightening as he saw the invaders' ships hover menacingly over nearby towns. The humans below scrambled in panic, their primitive defenses useless against advanced Cytherian technology. "They're going to destroy everything," Cale muttered under his breath, gripping the edge of the table until his knuckles turned white. Lyria stood beside him, her glowing eyes fixed on the chaos unfolding outside. She felt a surge of anger, not at the humans who were now caught in the crossfire, but at herself. This invasion was her fault. Her presence on Earth had drawn Vraxis here, and innocent lives would be lost because of it. "We have to stop them," she said firmly, turning to Cale. Her voice carried none of the hesitation that once defined her. Instead, it was filled with resolve. Cale shook his head. "You can't fight an entire army by yourself." "I don't need to fight them all," Lyria replied, clutching the crystalline dagger tightly. "I just need to stop Vraxis. If I defeat him, maybe they'll retreat." Before Cale could argue further, the ground trembled beneath their feet. A loud boom echoed through the forest as one of the ships fired a devastating blast nearby, sending flames shooting into the sky. The attack was a declaration. Vraxis wasn't negotiating. He was conquering. Lyria didn't hesitate. With a determined glance at Cale, she sprinted toward the battlefield, her heart pounding with equal parts fear and fury. Cale followed close behind, unwilling to let her face this alone. When they reached the clearing where Vraxis awaited, the scene was nothing short of apocalyptic. Fires raged across the landscape, and the air crackled with energy from weapons fire. Vraxis stood at the center of it all, his armor gleaming arrogantly as he commanded his troops. When he spotted Lyria, a cruel smile spread across his face. "Still alive, sister," he sneered. "How predictable. Did you think you could hide forever?" Lyria stepped forward, her voice steady despite the turmoil around her. "This ends now, Vraxis. Leave Earth, or I will make you regret coming here." Vraxis laughed, the sound cold and mocking. "You? Defeat me. You're still the same pathetic girl father abandoned. Nothing has changed. But something asterisk had asterisk change. Lyria raised the crystalline dagger, its glow intensifying as her emotions surged. Fury, pain, and determination fueled her power, creating a blinding aura around her. For the first time, Vraxis hesitated, his smug expression faltering. The battle that followed was fierce and unrelenting. Vraxis attacked with brutal precision, his plasma blade cutting through the air like lightning. But Lyria countered each strike with skill honed through months of training, her movements fluid and calculated. Every blow she landed chipped away at Vraxis's confidence, forcing him to realize that she was no longer the weakling he remembered. As the duel reached its climax, Lyria unleashed a powerful wave of energy, knocking Vraxis off balance. Before he could recover, she pressed the tip of the dagger to his throat, her voice low but commanding. Surrender or die. For a moment, silence fell over the battlefield. Then, unexpectedly, another figure emerged from the shadows. Zorithis himself, Lyria's father. His arrival stunned everyone, including Lyria. Zorithis surveyed the scene, his golden eyes locking onto his daughter. There was no anger in his gaze, only intrigue. Impressive, he said, his deep voice carrying authority. You've proven yourself stronger than I ever imagined. Lyria lowered her weapon slightly, confused. Why are you here? To offer you a choice, Zorithis replied. Return to Cytherian as my heir, and I will call off this invasion. Or stay here and watch both worlds burn. Torn between loyalty to Kale and her newfound sense of duty, Lyria faced the hardest decision of her life. Whatever she chose, the consequences would shape the future of two planets and define who she truly was. The weight of Zorithis's words hung heavy in the air, pressing down on Lyria like a storm cloud. Her father's offer was tempting. Return to Cytherian as his heir, reclaim her place among her people, and end the destruction threatening Earth. But it came at a cost. Leaving behind Kale, the man who had shown her kindness when no one else would, and the world that had given her a second chance. Lyria glanced at Kale, standing just a few steps away. His face was pale, his body still weakened from his injuries, but his eyes burned with quiet determination. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She could see the trust in his gaze, the belief that she could do what was right, not just for herself, but for everyone involved. Turning back to Zorithis, Lyria straightened her posture, holding her head high. I won't choose between my worlds, she declared, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Earth is worth protecting, and so is Cytherian, but neither will thrive under your rule. Zorithis raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by her defiance. You dared challenge me. After everything I've done for you. You abandoned me. Lyria shot back, her glowing form radiating intensity. You called me weak, unworthy. But look at me now. I'm stronger than you ever thought possible, not because of you, but in spite of you. Vraxis growled angrily, stepping forward as if to strike her down. But Zorithis raised a hand, silencing his son. For the first time, there was a flicker of respect in the king's golden eyes. Very well, he said slowly. If you think you can lead better than I have, then prove it. End this invasion without bloodshed, and I'll step aside. Lyria nodded sharply, turning to address the gathered warriors, raising her crystalline dagger high, its light piercing through the smoke-filled sky. She spoke with a clarity and strength that silenced even the fiercest skeptics. Listen to me, she called out. This war serves no purpose. Humans are not your enemies. They are capable of greatness, just as we are. Together, our two worlds can build something greater than conquest or domination. Her words resonated deeply, especially among the younger warriors who had grown weary of endless battles. Slowly, one by one, they lowered their weapons, their glowing forms dimming as tension eased. Even Vraxis reluctantly stood down, though his scowl made it clear he wasn't happy about it. With the immediate threat neutralized, Lyria turned back to Zorithis. "It's time for a new era," she said firmly. "One where strength isn't measured by how many you conquer, but by how many you protect." To everyone's astonishment, Zorithus bowed his head, a gesture of submission, and stepped aside. In that moment, Lyria became more than just a princess. She became a leader, a bridge between two worlds. In the weeks that followed, Lyria worked tirelessly to forge peace between humans and Cytherians. Under her guidance, the ancient relics hidden on Earth were rediscovered, symbolizing unity between the two races. Trade routes opened, knowledge was shared, and alliances formed. As for Kel, he chose to remain by Lyria's side, not as her protector, but as her partner. Together, they walked a path neither had imagined possible, proving that true strength lies not in power, but in connection. And so, beneath twin suns and glowing moons, a new dawn rose, not just for Cytherian or Earth, but for all who dared to dream of harmony. Lyria, once dismissed as weak, had transformed into a beacon of hope, lighting the way for generations to come.